Hello friends, for today's video I'm going to be doing an unhaul. Because I like to try and hype up my local bookstores when I do book hauls, since I have the opportunity once again in this unhaul to hype them up, I'm going to take it. So before we jump into the unhaul itself, a quick sec to say that if you're ever in Arizona, you should definitely check out Bookman's Changing Hands, and I'll add Book Off now to that. Book Off I think is great for if you're somebody who you just love that feeling of a used bookstore, because I do feel like it has that feeling a little bit more in the traditional sense, but also if you're somebody who loves any kind of sort of anime manga figures, they definitely have a lot of that, and they just in general have a lot of anime and manga volumes as well. They do contain some comics, and they have things like movies and video games, so they do have a huge mix. It's just the stores themselves are on the smaller side. And I know for some people they like that cozier, smaller feel. Changing Hands has fantastic, I don't know how else to say it, sounds cheesy, but great vibes and the aesthetic in general. And there's two locations. There's one in Tempe and there's one in the downtown Phoenix area. The downtown Phoenix one has a little bit more of a youthful downtown vibe to it, and then I would say the one in Tempe is a little bit more family oriented. It has a restaurant attached and it's a Wildflower bread company, so it kind of has this like cozier, more brunch feel to it. And then the one in downtown, while you can't walk straight into it, there is a really cool restaurant right next to it, and there's a cafe in the center. Both locations are fantastic. And then Bookman's, what I was saying about Book Off, where it has a little bit more of a small feel, but you have a lot of mixed media, that is true for Bookman's, except for it's massive. So if you're ever in Arizona, all of those are worth seeing. And Bookman's has a number of locations all over the state, so highly recommend all of them. And as I said, this is where I'm probably going to be taking a lot of these books. And on that note, let's jump into the unhaul itself. The first one, interestingly, I actually bought these used from Pango with what is essentially like credit on Pango. So when you sell something on Pango, you can keep what you made from the sales in the app and you can use it, and they call it Pango Bucks, or you can just send it to your bank account. And I actually got these with some Pango Bucks, aka store credit. And I read the first one. I actually bought this because it was part of a series. I just went ahead and got all 3 books because the seller was selling them. And I read the first book, and that would be An Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors. I didn't dislike this book. I also didn't love it, though. And I haven't had the opportunity to talk about it yet because I did pick it up for my steampunk project that I'm working on. I will get more into the details about the story and the characters and the world and everything in that. But the first book just didn't necessarily motivate me to continue on with the series necessarily. So I have the first book that I will be selling, and also books 2 and 3, because as I said, the seller was selling all of them. So I just went ahead and got the series. I was really hopeful that I would love this. I have a friend who I always jokingly say is like my book twin, because we almost always have identical tastes. And this go around, I think she might have been the one who recommended it, and I see why, but it just didn't quite click for me. Next up, there's a little bit of an explanation for this one. So the book would be Encyclopedia of Fairies, specifically the UK edition. And I really liked the UK covers. When the first book came out, I liked the UK and the US, and I really liked this first book in this series. And oftentimes when I really, really like a story, I like having multiple editions. I like seeing the creativity and how it differs from one country to the next. And I went ahead and got this one. Then Fairy Loot ended up doing special editions, and the naked hardbacks of those are unbelievably gorgeous. So I was like, oh, well, I don't really need this one, because I would rather have the Fairy Loot editions, which already have a it's basically the same exact front cover, just a slight color variation. And then you take the sleeve off and it's a better version of basically this. So I was like, I don't need this. So I'm going to be taking that one in. I don't know why I'm summarizing by saying at the end, I'm going to take this one in, because that's the whole point of an unhaul. So I'm going to stop saying that after the end of every single book that I hold up for you. Next up, one of the few that I will likely actually be selling on Pango, because I really want to ensure that somebody who is a big fan of this series is able to get their hands on it and for a reasonable price, because I do feel like sometimes people get special editions and then when they go to sell it secondhand, they sell it for way more than they ever paid for it. And that would be A Fate Inked in Blood. This is a story by Danielle Jensen, and I liked this first book. I don't know that I like it enough that I need to then get the second book as a special edition. I plan to read the second book, and if I like it, then I'll just keep the US editions. And also the US editions are quite nice because they're one of those books that, for whatever reason, the publisher decided, we're going to go ahead and make this basically a special edition, even though it's a regular edition, meaning it already has the bells and whistles to it, and it's just a first print run. So if I like that second book, I'll just stick to having the US editions, and somebody who's a huge, huge fan can hopefully get their hands on this particular Fairy Loot edition. Let me go ahead and show to what makes it special. So it has an alternate cover, and then there's artwork on the inside, and I went ahead and kept the note that you can see the writing there. So this has artwork on it, and that same artwork, if you open the book, is there on the inside, and then you have more artwork on the back. I do quite like the art there. And then the naked hardback itself has a design on it, which I think is very nice. But I'm more than happy to have somebody else who is a huge, huge fan of this story have this edition. The next one I'm going to mention, it's almost the reverse of what I was describing with an Encyclopedia of Fairies. So I had the Fairy Loot edition of Belelladonna, and I quite liked that first book. Since the completion of the trilogy, I have said that I ended up liking the first book the most in the series, but as it was coming out, I wanted to have matching hardbacks, and I was hoping to have also matching Fairy Loot editions for books 2 and 3. That said, when the Fairy Loot edition for the second book came out, which is called Foxglove, it sold out before I was able to get a copy. And in the past, when things like this have happened, because UK editions tend to not be hardbacks for as long as US editions, I thought, let me just go ahead and get a regular UK hardback so it'll match my hardback of the first one that I have. It's just one of them will be a special edition and one of them won't, but at least the cover design matches, the size of the books matches. And then eventually I was able to get one that was being sold secondhand. And as a result, then I had 2 copies of the same book, and it's not like it was a different art style. It's not like it was from a different country. It was both the same imagery. It's just one was a special edition and had a slight color variation. So I don't need this one. It's so beautiful. I really love the design of these covers, and I love the color combination. I think it's absolutely, absolutely beautiful, but I don't need the regular edition and the UK edition. I don't need the UK edition and the Fairy Loot version because they're almost exactly the same. There's just a couple of embellishments that don't exist on that one that exist on the copy I ended up getting secondhand. Next up is a book that was a new release last year, and I liked the book. I liked the thematic elements. I liked what it was doing with a lot of characters that are kind of the lesser known characters of the story. I just didn't love it, and I would rather that somebody is able to find this secondhand, and that would be The Bright Sword. There's a whole video I did where I have a new fantasy releases wrap up where I go more in depth with this. And in fact, if there's any videos I've done where I go more in depth with these stories, I'll have them linked because this is more of just kind of an overview. But like I said, I enjoyed this one. It just isn't something that I feel the need to have. And it is so chonky that it does take up a lot of space on the shelf. If it were a tiny little mass market paperback, maybe I'd be more inclined to keep it because then it was just like a little thing you can tuck away. But I would really rather that somebody who really enjoys the story, as I said, is able to find it secondhand, especially because the used bookstores that I was talking about before, they actually do give you a decent amount for the books that you bring in. So they give you a good amount of credit. And then if it is a used book, because some of them sell alongside new books, they'll sell used books, so they'll have a combination. But if it is used, they end up usually charging you for a very, very reasonable price for a used book. And I hope that somebody can get that for much less than they would have spent to get it full price. This next one I'm not selling because it's an ARC, but I am going to be donating it, and that would be the ARC of Grave Empire. I ended up getting the Broken Binding edition, and it's fantastic because Broken Binding always makes fantastic editions, and I'm really appreciative that I was given an ARC of this early, but I don't need this ARC at this point because I have another edition of this book. Big fan of Richard Swan's works. I can't wait for more to be written, and I'm hoping, because I will likely be donating this to my library, I'm really excited at the idea that somebody else can check this book out. I mentioned this in something else, don't know if this will go up or if the other video will go up, but it was actually really exciting because the narrator for my audiobook for my books is actually one of the narrators for this, which was so cool and so surreal, and he's so fantastic. I would just, if you're an audiobook listener, just look up anything he's narrated if you are somebody who likes to get your recommendations based off narrators, because he's amazing, and he continued to be amazing in this. So that was really exciting. But as I said, donating this one to one of my local libraries. And then last for today, this is one that I actually kind of went back and forth a number of times, and I think even in my bookshelf tour that I did, I even was saying in that, like, oh, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking about taking these in. And that would be my Drowning Empire trilogy. So I do have, because it's a trilogy, I have all 3 of the books in this series, and I do plan to take all of them in. The 3rd book is right over there with the 2nd one that I just set down. But I did end up eventually getting special editions for this series. When it was first coming out, there weren't special editions. The books came out, and then special editions were announced. And I really quite enjoyed this trilogy, so I did want to have those special editions where you have the artwork. That's a part of a conversation that I feel like we don't include when we talk about purchasing books, consumerism, all those things, is that special editions, in a sense, are very much solidifying that we want to support artists, which is oftentimes that little extra flair to these special editions, or at least one of the special flares to them, is that we're hiring artists, we're providing them with opportunities, and a lot of times these people are fans of the books that we're fans of, and it's really great because artists have a deeper understanding of what's going to make these characters come to life when they are hired for these projects. So in general, I especially like not only special editions because they're beautiful and it's just wonderful to see artistry go into the craft of developing a book, but also I like that additional perk of saying firmly, we support artists, real artists, not AI artists. But anyway, because I got that set, I was like, I mean, they're the same, but with different colors, except for these also. One, this first book, when it was printed, now the paperbacks have the red in the background to match what they did with the colors for the rest of it. So you can see it's teal here. So the paperbacks have red in the same area. And these, the first book doesn't have that. So there's that kind of as a strike against it. And also they're not special. And even though I really like this story, and I do like having multiple editions of some of my favorites, I prefer when the multiple editions are really showcasing artistry from different places, not necessarily the same editions, but with different colors. That's less of my thing. So I figured take the trilogy in or sell it on Pango or something, and then somebody else can have hardbacks of all 3 of these. That's it though for this unhaul, just kind of getting some things off the shelves. I hope that these find a nice home in a fellow book lover. But if you have any thoughts on any of these books, or if you're interested in seeing more in-depth reviews or anything like that, as I said, I'll have those linked. And if you have thoughts, feel free to leave those in the comments. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.